and welcome to another tutorial from Suzanne at Suzy Crafts. Today we'll be using some Altenew products, their dye-based ink pads and some of their stamps. I'm showing you these ink splats from Altenew. These are called Splash of Colour. I'm going to be using the woodware splat ones that look like a larger background splash and some of these smaller, finer ones. I'm also using the Wild Hibiscus Altenew stamp set. I'm going to be using 3 of the flowers from this set. I'm using the Anna Marie Designs cardstock. It's a 300g heavyweight cardstock, cut ready, a quarter under 5x7, a really nice size to use. I buy my Altenew dye-based inks in the little sets of 4. This is one of the greens packs and I'm going to be using the frayed leaf green. This is also an Altenew acrylic block, and I like the acrylic blocks for this because the stamping is so random. You don't need to use a stamping platform. Altenew acrylic blocks are really good because they have the grid on if you was to line up a greeting or anything like that. And I'm going to randomly stamp the frayed leaf green over off the edge of my piece of cardstock. One area will be heavier than the other, normally at the bottom, and then sort of a lighter covering at the top. I'm using the medium size splat from the woodware stamp set. Every card that you will make using this technique will be unique. But it's a great way of making a box set of cards with just different greetings in the middle. You can make them all the same colour or one of each colour in this set, entirely up to you. I'm going to clean my stamp off. This is a stamp scrubber pad. It's fluffy on one side and it gives a really quick, easy way of cleaning your stamp. I'm now taking the larger ink splat and I'm going to use the Frosty Pink out of my pink set, which is the lightest one in that set. And I always take my ink to my stamp, tapping just all the way across to get a nice even coverage. You never do it the other way around because it just pushes the ink into the base of the stamp. So I'm just going to go around in between my greens, twisting my stamp round to find the best way. I don't really want to overlap it onto the green, and I ink it up every single time I do this. If you rotate your stamp on your ink block, you'll always find a way where it fits in between the green, and it also gives a really nice look to the card. It's not all in line and symmetrical. I turn my card round to stamp up the other way. I find this a lot easier than taking my hand across and stamping along the top. So you can stamp off the edge, inking up little parts of the ink block stamps if you want to. I've started using these stamps quite a lot lately. I think they fit in very well with most things. And you start getting into a little bit of habit of going around collecting splat stamps. I drive people mad because I'm like, oh, there's a new splat stamp, I must have it. This is the largest flower in the Altenew stamp collection. It's the one with the leaf attached. I'm going to get my cool grey set and I'm going to use the second lightest, which is Silverstone. This stamp is really good. You can use the whole thing if you want to, but I just like to use the leaf on the greens for this particular set of cards. So I'm just turning it round, going over the green, seeing which way it fits best. I'm going to turn my piece of cardstock round and stamp the leaves up the other way. And just use your green ink splats as a guide of how much you're going to stamp the leaf on. So covering up quite a bit of those green ink splats but not going over the pink areas. because we're going to use our flower stamp for that. I'm now going to show you a tip using the Altenew ink pads. They come in a set of 4 and they're in these little clear pods. The ones with the colours actually on the lids are fine, but these black ones with just the writing on I find hard to know what colour they are. So I cut a piece of card exactly the same size as the information strip, and I use my splat stamp to stamp the colours on the back and then put it all back in. Loading my darkest at the top right down to my lightest, I can then turn over and see what the true colour of the ink actually is. And I find this a really good way for classes as well. They can just flip them over and see what the true colour actually is. Now positioning my second stamp on my acrylic block, and I'm inking that up with the second to lightest grey, which is the silver stone again. We'll use the same for the leaf. Tapping all the way across my stamp, get a nice even coverage all the way over. And I rotate the stamp over the top of the pink splats and find where I want it to fit, trying not to overlap my leaves that I've already done earlier. I'm now going to swap over my stamp to the other one. This one has much more rounded petals. Both stamps, one is pointed petals and one is rounded, and they both have detail down one side of each of the stamps. I'm tapping all the way across my ink cube, rotating until I find the right spot where it fits in. I always tap my ink cube over the top of my stamp, never the other way around. I'm going to turn my cardstock round, twisting my stamp, finding the best place where it fits. You can start to see the card come together now. We're nearly finished, just finding the best way for it to fit. Going back to my other stamp to finish off the top of this card. And this is my silver stone grey. So this card is quite pastel in the background and has a deeper grey top image. You'll see the difference between the two cards when we make the blue one up on the square piece of cardstock in a minute. I'm just cleaning off my stamps. Like to give them a final clean before I put them away with a baby wipe, but the stamp scrubber pad is great when you're just going in between stamps backwards and forwards, just wiping it off slightly so you don't get it all over yourself. I'm now going to my lightest grey, which is Limousine, and I'm using the small dots stamp which is in the woodware set. And I'm only inking up part of it, so I'm only tapping my ink pad across part of it, and I'm just going to do one quick spot down. You won't be able to see this very clearly at the minute, but we're going to zoom in later on so you can see what's going on. And it just gives really fine dot images. These are really tiny ink splats out of the set. I'm now switching to the smaller one. And I always rotate again so they're not up the same way, and I'm only inking part of the stamp, and it's one quick down, so I have little tiny splats in the background. These work great on lots of different cards. You can just see those in the background like a little watercolour effect. Now I've got a piece of cardstock, pale pink, out of my craft stash, and I've just cut that a fraction larger than my white piece. I'm going to take the collal glue. I like this glue because it has a little slip time, so you can place it on and position it correctly. I do small L's in each corner. You don't need a lot of it. You place it down and you have a little time just to slide that around and get it exactly where you want it to be, which you can't do with double-sided tape. And just smoothing it down and leaving it to dry. Now, my apologies for not knowing what this stamp set is or what company it's from. It's a really nice stamp set because it has a tiny scroll, then the greeting, and then a tiny scroll. And I think they fit well on most cards. I really like the way they do that. But as I say, I'm so sorry, I've thrown away the packaging, so I don't know which company they're from. If anybody does know, please message, that would be really helpful, and then we can identify these stamps. I'm choosing a happy birthday. Just in case I need to restamp it and do it darker, I'm going to be using the Tim Holtz stamping platform. So I lay the stamp onto my card. I then flip over the top so that it sticks. I'm inking it up, and I'm using the grey Silverstone ink to do that. And I'm just going to give it another go as well, so I can make it a little bit darker. It's a really good way of doing your sentiment stamps because sometimes they don't always come out, especially these ones because they're quite a fine design. And I always use my magnets to keep my cardstock down. My stamping platform's been a bit temperamental, as you can see. I'm now finishing off this card by taking my Nouveau Jewel Drops. Now these ones dry like translucent. They're translucent to the colour that you choose. So this one is translucent pink. And I'm just going 3 dots at a time. That's where I think they fit in over my card. They take about 15 to 20 minutes to dry. You can also use them on parchment, and you can use them so that they dry like flatback pearls. You can just see those glistening. So I'm going to make another card, and this one is on 6x6 cardstock, and this time I'm going to keep it so it looks like watercolour. So everything being really, really pastel. This is the frayed leaf colour, which is the lightest colour out of my green set of Altenew inks. And I'm doing exactly the same as I did before. I'm just also speeding it up for you there so that you've already seen the process and it's exactly the same. But it works equally as well on a square card. It also works on different size cards as well. Now this is my blue Arctic, so I'm using my splat there from the woodware stamps, and see how watercolour that looks in the background and how it gives a really, really soft effect. This is a great card for a sympathy card or a get well card, something like that. We're going to keep everything really pastel and really soft, and then I'm going to bring the greeting in a darker, much darker shade. So fitting it in, rotating it like we did before, turning that stamp around, using our blue, This time I'm filling in with my small splats first. It really doesn't matter in which order you do this. You can do it before the leaf, you can do it after the leaf, it doesn't really matter. But this time I'm using the light grey in the set, which is the limousine. And I'm just going over the middle of my card very slightly. Still want to keep the centre pretty clear for my greeting. And I'm using my flower stamp, also in the limousine, stamping over my pale blue areas, stamping off the page, rotating my card using the same stamp again, but up the other way, fitting it in, seeing where it best goes. Now I'm swapping over the stamps, inking up, tapping all the way across and off the side of my cardstock until I'm happy. You can really see the difference now between the two cards. This one has a more softer look, like the old writing paper sets where you had a soft sort of watermark effect in the background. And that's just by keeping the grey lighter with that limousine colour, which is the lightest grey out of that packet. Once it's all full, you're done. Now I'm going to take my darkest grey, which is pure graphite. Once again, I'm going to use my Tim Holtz stamping platform to stamp my greeting. Now I've chosen the greeting with sympathy on this one. I get asked a lot of like, how can I do nice, pretty sympathy cards? Not everybody wants a doom and gloom card or a religious card for sympathy. Just for somebody to say, hello, I'm thinking of you, you know, we're sending our love. And this is a really good way of making one of those cards. Making up a set of these cards, sort of a packet of 5, is a really great Christmas present for somebody as well. You could make up a pack of all different greetings, you know, one wedding, one sympathy, just to say hello, happy couple, anniversary, lots and lots of ideas, and then you could tie it with some ribbon for a really nice Christmas present for somebody. I'm going to mount this one straight onto my white 6x6 cardstock. As you can see, it is a quarter below the 6" that I have cut my cardstock that we've been stamping on. I always work on a piece of cardstock, not direct onto my card. And we're going to finish off with the Jewel Drops, which is a translucent blue. And I do 3 dots at a time, where we stamped our little ink splat dots earlier, at the end of the greeting, and then where I think they best fit in on my card. Taking about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes to dry. Be careful in that time not to place anything on top of it. You can just see those glistening there, just a final touch. So that's the difference between the two. You see the one on the right is a lot darker with the grey. The one on the left, the blue one, a much more lighter watercolour effect. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial today. If you would like to see more, please subscribe to my channel, Suzy Crafts, and my name is Suzanne. If you'd like to drop me a line, please feel free. Give us a like and share your cards with us that you've made from this tutorial. That will be great. I also have a Facebook page. It's under Suzanne Ford and then Suzy Crafts that you're welcome to join. And I also teach live classes. Thank you for watching. Happy crafting.